feel like Moondrop is starting to hit their stride when it comes to software integration with their new earphones. This app is available now on both Android and iOS, and the UX is getting better, but there's still a bit of a learning curve in order to get the most out of your new Moondrop TWS, like the Space Travel 2 that we've got here, which you can probably figure out, or you can watch this video because, hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and in this episode of Waveguide, I'm gonna show you how to use the Moondrop app to get the most out of your product. Okay, we're gonna cover some basic stuff like how to pair your earphones, because there've been a couple of issues I've seen some people have. I've had them myself, and I've got the solution, so we'll talk about that. But beyond that, I wanna dive into some settings in this Moondrop app that are kind of hidden. They're not exactly secret, but they're gonna unlock some features that you might not have known were on your earphone. And then of course, I wanna dive into the parametric EQ, which is super, super powerful, but it is a little bit limited in the way that they've implemented it. But if you know a couple of tricks, you can actually kind of push it beyond the limits that Moondrop has provided and get even more bass. So if you like the idea of helpful content like this, shout out to our sponsor HiFiGo for making waveguide videos like this one possible. HiFiGo is an online retailer of earphones, headphones, digital audio players, all that jazz, including Moondrop TWS stuff. So if you want to check out anything that we talk about in this episode, I've got them linked in the description down below. But with that said, let's figure out how to use this app. Okay, I wanted to start with just a couple of basic Bluetooth pairing tips. I know Bluetooth pairing shouldn't be that complicated, and most of the time it's not, but there are a couple of edge cases that you might run into, but we're gonna cover also the basics. So when you get your new Space Travel 2, to initiate pairing mode, just take them out of the case, all right? Once they are out of the case, they should automatically go into pairing mode. And if you're not sure about it, put them in your ears right after you take them out of the case, and you're gonna hear the little girl that's trapped inside these earphones say, doo doo doo. That sound means that they're in pairing mode. And once they're in pairing mode, you can go into the Bluetooth settings of your digital audio player or your phone, go to pair new device, and you should see this option for a Space Travel 2. Now, already I'm running into one of these issues that I've seen some people mention, which is you might notice I have two entries for Space Travel 2 showing up here. I don't know why this happens. It only happens sometimes. I've never seen this happen on my iOS device, but on Android here, every once in a while it shows up as two separate devices. Here's the pro tip. It's not complicated. Just if you have these icons, at least, this helps you, that Bluetooth icon, ignore this one. This is the one you want, the one with the headphone icon next to it. You tap that, it should automatically prompt you, do you want to pair? You click pair, and it should pair very, very quickly. You're done. So now you have paired your earphones. Now, let's say you've run into some other issue. Maybe you've tried connecting them to another device and they're just kind of confused. And this can happen with kind of any Bluetooth product, to be honest. So what you want to be able to do is reset the Bluetooth connection on the Space Travel. And here's how you do it. I mean, there's a couple ways you could probably do it, but here's how I recommend doing it. Go into the Bluetooth settings of your phone and just make sure you forget the Space Travel 2, right? We don't want to accidentally connecting in some weird state that doesn't work, because sometimes that kind of stuff can happen. This is Bluetooth stuff, but make sure that the phone you've forgotten the connection there. Again, take the earphones out of the case. They're gonna go into pairing mode. They're gonna be looking for the phone because they've previously connected to it, but they're not gonna be able to find it. Eventually, they will go into just a traditional pairing mode. Again, you'll hear the little girl trapped inside say doo doo doo, in which case you know that these things are in pairing mode. Now, once they are in pairing mode, I'll throw these in my ear just to kind of demonstrate what to do. How to reset them is you press and hold on the touch control for either side, both of them. You want to hold both of them for 8 seconds. Now, this will toggle on or off the ANC if it hasn't before. And then after 8 seconds, you should hear this little doo-doo-doo, little chime it's not the little girl trapped inside. It's actually an electronic chime. And that chime indicates that the Bluetooth or just the settings inside of this thing have been completely reset, in which case you can throw it back into your case, which is what I would do. You might not need to do this, but I always recommend this step. Throw it back in the case, wait a second, take them out of the case, and then they should go back into pairing mode, in which case you can resume pairing from your phone, and it should be like a fresh pairing that should solve whatever kind of problems you might have had because of that. By the way, I'm making a push to get to 100,000 subscribers. I know ultimately the subscriber number doesn't really matter, but kind of in the back of my head, I've been working toward this for so long, and we're getting kind of close. And as it turns out, last time I looked at my analytics, about 75% of the people that watch this channel don't subscribe. So if you want to help me out, subscribe to the channel. Again, you don't have to. Don't feel pressured. Don't feel guilted into it. I appreciate you watching my channel. But if you want to hook me up, subscribe to the channel. Okay, back to the video. Before I move on from pairing, just one quick tip. If you're using a product like this is the Moondrop Robin. With this one, you don't actually have to take the earphones out of the case in order to get them to go into pairing mode. You just have to lift the lid and they're automatically going to go into pairing mode. So this has a couple of implications. So one, when you're first pairing, again, you don't have to take them out of the case. You can, it's not gonna be a problem, but you don't have to. The other thing is that when you are trying to reset the device, you can leave them inside the case and just press and hold the touch panels for 8 seconds right here. It might be harder to know exactly what's going on because it's not in your ear, you're not gonna hear the sound effects telling you what's going on. But if you listen carefully, you can hear her. She's trapped inside and she'll tell you what's going on. Okay, now I want to dive into the app and just show you where a couple of settings that are actually pretty useful are kind of hidden away. So when you've got the earphones paired, launch into the app, it's going to scan for any devices that are connected. And if you've got multiple devices, you know, most people aren't going to have multiple Moondrop products like I do, but scroll down here, you will see the device that is connected. It will be colored. Tap into there, it's going to connect and present you with our settings. So here's where already there's some interesting hidden settings. Like for example, if you tap on the earphones up here, you can dive in and customize the control, like the touch controls, right? So I like to have it so that play and pause is a double click. I just don't want them playing and pausing if I accidentally single click. So make that a double click. I basically disable these other functionalities because I don't know, I just don't want to remember all this stuff, and I leave the ANC controls on a long press. So this is how I set up mine. Obviously you can choose to set up yours however you would like, but the way that you get there nonetheless is by tapping on the earphone here in the UI. Some other hidden settings, if you go into, you see this ANC section here, if you tap on this arrow in the upper right corner, you'll dive into some more hidden settings here where you can, so basically what you're doing here with these toggles is you're toggling, we were just talking about the touch controls that you have on this thing, right? If I long press the control, it's gonna go between ANC on, ANC off, and transparency mode. I don't really care about ANC off, I just want ANC on or transparency mode. So in here, I can turn ANC off, and it's just gonna skip that setting entirely. So that's a nice little feature that is, I don't know, we'll call that hidden. And then another quasi-hidden function, if you go into this function settings, again, you might notice there's another arrow here in the top right corner. You tap into that, and that'll show you some additional settings that are, again, a little bit on the hidden side. This one right here is called dual device connection, which is not the clearest description, but I believe this is basically multi-point pairing. So if you want to connect your earphones to multiple devices, you can go in here, enable that setting, and then you can connect it to your computer and your phone and be able to use both devices. Not simultaneously, but it'll automatically switch back and forth. You don't have to reconnect them both, which is pretty cool. I will say that there is a bit of a warning here. Moondrop gives you a warning saying that it might reduce stability of your connection. So if you notice that it's causing problems for you, you might also want to go back in here and change it. But for me, it seemed to work okay, so there you go. There's also some other settings that you can expect to find here if you're using a different earphone. These are the only settings that the Space Travel has, but if you're using a device like the Robin, this one actually supports LDAC or also LC3. And if you want to use those codecs, you're going to have to find them here in the function setting, which is found in the same exact location. You know, with the Robin connected, you would launch the app, tap into the Robin, go down here to function settings, and tap that little triangle, and that's where you'll find that additional setting. And then the last thing that I will highlight here before we get into talking about the EQ functions is this is also where you can update the firmware on your earphone. You can see it's down here. You just need to scroll down, tap into firmware. Currently, I don't have any new firmware updates, so I'm good. But if you need to update your firmware, you can do it here. And this does actually support some older devices too. So I've got this is the Moondrop free DSP cable. This one came out, I'm gonna say like 2 years ago. Connecting this to it, I had a firmware update. So all this stuff is still working here. Okay, now to the fun part, which is using the EQ. I'm gonna show you just where the basic preset EQs are, which is, I guess, kind of fun, but really the fun is gonna be the parametric EQ, which we'll dive into next. But just to start, right, again, launch into the app, go to your device, and no surprise, click this Tune EQ button. The Tune EQ button is where there are presets, right? These are Moondrop generated presets for your specific device. So just go into here and you want to tap on these very tiny buttons that say use. You tap that button, it'll confirm. The button will switch to the word using, and that's how you know that I'm now using the bass minus mode, right? Or I'm using now the bass plus mode. That's how you toggle between the presets that Moondrop has presented for you. Now, if you're not happy with those presets, if you want to do more tweaking, and I encourage you to, by the way, if you haven't until now learned about how to use parametric EQ, I actually did an entire video series on how to use parametric EQ. It's easier than ever using this because it's all built into one device. You don't need to go and install a separate software. But if you want to learn how to use parametric EQ and like really the nitty-gritty of it, I'll link to that video, I guess, up here. Hold on. It should be right there, right exactly there. You can dive into that, but I want to show you specifically how to do stuff here inside of the Moondrop app. So this was very unclear to me initially when I launched this app. I thought that the parametric EQ would be under Tune EQ. It's not. Instead, you want to go into the setting which says Online Interactive DSP. Once you're in Online Interactive DSP, you're going to see something that doesn't look like parametric EQ because it's not. This is basically community shared presets or something like that. I don't totally understand what's going on here because it does appear to be in Chinese and I do not speak Mandarin. But if you see this little icon up here in the upper right corner, in fact, let me zoom in on that and just highlight it for you. These little settings icon, you tap that little guy and then now the world is your oyster. This is the parametric EQ UI that you want to be at. And a couple of tips before I get into how to get the most out of the parametric EQ, a couple of tips, a couple of issues that you might run into that are kind of display related, which is interesting. So when I first launched this, I'm not going to get it right now, so I'm not going to be able to show you exactly, at least I wasn't recreating it just a second ago. By default, I was in dark mode on my phone, and the app will by default like try to automatically detect which mode you're in and change up the theme, as you kind of just saw there. When I first launched this, all of these letters were like black. So I had the buttons, but they were in black on a black background, which meant that I couldn't see it. And the way that I fixed it was that I from the Moondrop app, I skipped out from here, went all the way back to the top setting, clicked on this settings button here in the lower right corner, and then up here, there's another setting button, which then lets you toggle on night mode. And you can see that by default, it's on follow system, which is, again, if your system is in dark mode, it's going to be dark mode. If it's not, it's not. But you can toggle this manually, and I toggled it manually into night mode, and that fixed my colors. I no longer have that color issue. So if you're having that color issue yourself, try reproducing that. Like, keep your phone in dark mode, back out, go here, and just make sure that the app is like being forced into light mode. Another issue, which I am able to reproduce for you. In fact, if you were paying attention, you might have noticed I was experiencing this issue just a second ago. This is something that I experienced, again, initially when I got this device. I'm using it here on an Android digital audio player, which actually has a smaller screen than most Android phones, but it's not that atypical, right? If you're into audio stuff, you might be using it on a device like this that has a smaller screen. And a problem with that is, well, actually punching on that down here, there's 3 buttons that you need. This button, well, that button resets the EQ. This one sends the EQ to your device, and I forget what this button does because the labels, I can't see the buttons, and there's no way to scroll down there, right? The page doesn't scroll. I mean, the page doesn't scroll, so there's no way to get down there. But here is how you fix this. And I fear that Moondrop's going to solve this problem, and this video might be obsolete. At least this section of the video might be obsolete, but here's how you solve it. Go into your Android device, go to Display Settings, and usually there's an option like this one called Display Size. Tap Display Size and just bump it down a little bit, right? We're gonna maybe just tap down once. We're gonna tap down once. Let's go. Using a touchscreen from an angle. There you go. Basically what that does is it just makes all of the UI on your device smaller, which maybe isn't what you want, but it will fix this problem. So close that out, go back into the Moondrop app, and now you can see, well, these options here. I've got reset, upload, and apply. I've now got the buttons that I couldn't see. So that's how you solve that problem. Now, apart from solving those problems, I want to show you a trick to getting the most out of this app, because There's actually kind of a pretty serious limitation, but if you know what you're doing, it's actually not that bad. And that limitation is just that the maximum gain that you can input, you can see here, it tells you what the range is. You can input a gain of negative 12 decibels to positive 3 decibels. So let's say you want to input, you want just a mega giga bass boost, right? Well, the most bass boost you can enter is 3 decibels. So you can tap 3. We can target, let's say 20 hertz, because let's say we want to target that low bass, and maybe we'll give it a Q factor of, I'm going to call it 0.4 because I know that that looks good. It gives me like a nice sub bass boost. And up here in the preview, well, you can see what it's doing, but it just might not look that impressive. Like here, I'll reset it just to show you what it looked like by default. But it might not look like it was that big of a bass boost because it kind of isn't that big of a bass boost. So how do we get around this? This is a really serious limitation. So I'm going to go back in here again. We're going to give it that 3 decibel bass boost at 20 hertz. We're good at 20 hertz. And again, we'll go with our 0.5 Q factor. All right, so we've got our bass boost looking kind of meager. But the way that you get around a limitation of maximum gain is you use cutting, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a filter at, I'm gonna set it at 500 hertz, okay? Set it at 500 hertz, and we're gonna give it a really wide Q factor. I'm gonna go with a Q factor of 0.2. So that'll give it a very big effect, and then we'll go into the gain setting, and let's just give it negative 12. I'm not saying that this is the best sounding EQ. I'm saying if you're trying to get the most bass, this is how you do it. Hit negative 12, and you see what we've done is we basically dipped all of this down here. Now you probably also want to add another that's going to dip kind of like the top end. So let's go with, I don't know, let's call it 8,000 hertz. We'll do a Q factor. This one doesn't need to be quite as wide, so we'll go with a half, 0.5 in the Q factor. And again, let's go with, let's call it like -8 or something like that, right? So we dip in the treble, and now versus where we were, this is just gobs more bass. If you want kind of another visualization of this, you can do this stuff in SquigLink actually, which I will pull up here. So this is the stock frequency response of the space travel in blue, and then the red line is what it looks like with a 3 decibel bass boost at 20 hertz, right? This is like the most you can normally get using this. But using this cut mechanism, or this cut strategy, you can instead get a bass boost that is that big, which again is not what I'm recommending, but you do you. Like, don't listen to me. Listen to your earphones any which way you want. But this is what you get with a +3 decibel bass boost and a -12 decibel cut to 500 hertz and like another 8 decibel cut at 8,000 hertz. So that's how you get the most out of the parametric EQ. I don't think there's anything else for me to talk about here. Again, if you want to dive more into the nitty-gritty of using parametric EQ, I recommend my video series, which I will have linked up here. There is actually one last thing I want to show you. Hold on. There's one last thing I want to show you, which is actually how to use the auto EQ on this device, because it's actually kind of interesting. Okay, if you're using a product like the Space Travel, it's not that complicated, as you might imagine. There is an auto EQ button here. You tap auto EQ, and it's going to automatically generate an EQ that converts the space travel to the target. Now you might be wondering, what target? Well, by default, it has a target selected, but you can actually change it. So you see here where they've got target, you can tap target. It's going to load some preset targets. And let's say you want to try a tilted diffuse field sound signature. Well, now you've got that as your target. Go in here, hit auto EQ, and it's going to automatically EQ my space travel to sound like a tilted diffuse field sound signature, which is pretty stinking cool. You can go in here, you can see all these other targets they have. They have the frequency response of some of their more expensive IMs, like the Dark Saber. You can auto EQ your space travel to sound kind of like a Dark Saber, which I think is actually a really cool functionality. This actually gets a little bit more complicated, however, when you're using a product like this, which is the free DSP cable, because well, it's got 2-pin connectors on it. You can connect kind of any earphone to this, in which case this idea of just picking a target and saying auto EQ me doesn't quite work, because you need to also specify which earphone you're starting with, which frequency response you're starting with. Thankfully, you can actually do that. I'm going to disconnect the space travel real quickly to show you what this looks like. We're going to switch over to plugging in the free DSP, in which case, this is me saying do. Yes, Moondrop app, you can access your own cable. We'll go into the free DSP. Same idea, go into online interactive DSP, click the little settings icon hidden in the top right corner. And now here, all right, imagine I've got a Moondrop LAN connected to this earphone. You could have a Moondrop ARIA, you could have anything connected to here, but I want it to sound like the Dark Saber. All right, let's go into here, go into our target. Let's pick the Dark Saber, and oh, hold on, what is this at? I don't know what this is set to. Can I reset this? I can't reset this. So by default, this is not set. I'm not even sure what it's set to right now. By default, it's just gonna show you a straight line because it doesn't know what the starting frequency response of your earphone is. But you can go into here and say, oh no, I'm actually using the Moondrop LAN. So it's gonna show you the stock frequency of the Moondrop LAN. Then you picked your target, right? I want it to sound like the Dark Saber. Now I can click this auto EQ button and it's going to generate an EQ that should make the Moondrop LAN sound a lot like the Moondrop Dark Saber. And that's kind of, honestly, that's actually like incredibly powerful tool. Now, don't expect it to sound exactly like a Moondrop Dark Saber. It gets more complicated. Again, watch my full video series if you want all the caveats and maybe tips on how to get around them, but that is nonetheless really cool functionality packed in this app. And now you know how to do it. Okay, now you know everything that you need to know about the Moondrop app in order to get the most out of your new Moondrop product. Again, shout out to HiFiGo for making waveguide videos like this one possible. If you're looking to check out one of these Moondrop products, I will have them linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, well, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, join me on Discord, also linked in the description down below, and I'll catch you in the next super review. Cheers.
Join with the force of reviews. We now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's begin with the pitch.